Hey guys, welcome to Plan Today on Tomorrow. My name is Garry Thurman, co-founder of Guardian Investment Advisors, along with my wife, Rhonda Thurman. Thank you so much for being here and joining us on Plan Today on Tomorrow. We come to you each and every week, trying to give you some great educational information about retirement planning in general. But we always throw a little fun in there, have a little fun with everything we're talking about. Just want to make the show entertaining for you guys, even though we're talking about the word money most of the time. But today's show is going to be a little bit different because we're going to shift gears from retirement planning and really focus on what I feel is one of the most important parts of going into retirement, and that is the word Medicare. And with me today are two of the most brilliant people I've ever met in the Medicare field, Tanner Moore, who works with us here at Guardian Investment Advisors, and our friend Justin Brock, who's been in the Medicare field for many, many years. We're not only going to talk about Medicare, but we're going to talk a little bit about team building. We're going to talk about what it means to run a company and to grow a business. So we're going to be all over the place today when it comes to Medicare planning. And I really want to focus on making sure if you're someone out there headed into that Medicare age of 65, the things you need to be doing now. And we don't want you to wait to the last minute. The things you need to be preparing for to make sure you're on the right Medicare plan, because it's essential to having that happy retirement and living every day like a Saturday. Really quick, one of the things we're giving away today is our 2026 Medicare Guide. All you have to do is text the word Medicare to 423-710-9199, 423-710-9199. We'll send that Medicare Guide right out to you. And if you're up in Knoxville, you can also text the word Medicare to 865-951-7526. Gentlemen, how we doing this morning?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Happy Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Monday's over.
Monday is over. That's right. I like that. So, guys, let's have a little fun. And Tanner, I always like to start the show with something a little crazy or a little fun. But Medicare it's not the most exciting topic to talk about, but everybody has to have it, turning 65 years old. But in your opinion, if Medicare had a mascot, what would it be?
I'm glad you prepped me with this question. I thought about it. I came up, I would say it would be a referee with a 500-page rule book. That's what I
A referee, like a football referee?
Yeah. And the rule book is just impossible to understand. It's just so long. So that's what I came up with.
I like it. Justin, what about you? A mascot for Medicare?
Well, a referee would be a great mascot for Medicare. So, but I don't want to steal and appropriate that. So my mascot for Medicare is just there's a kid in The Simpsons, and he would always go, or maybe it was in South Park, but he talked about The Simpsons. He would say, "Simpsons did it." So every time they had an idea, he'd say, "Simpsons did it." Yep. And I just think of that kid every time you try to do something in Medicare, and he goes, "You can't do that. You can't do that." You know, all the time, or because it's the same thing as your concept. The referee, there's so many rules, and nobody knows how to navigate the whole thing. I've been in it 13 years, and I learned something new just about every day.
Yeah, It's crazy. It's always changing, Tanner. You always come to me and, this is changing. And it's just a confusing topic. But here's what I have seen since we added Medicare to our practice a few years ago with Tanner. And Justin, I'm going to start with you on this one. People spend 25, 30, 35 years getting ready for retirement. Yet they're about to turn 65, and they just look at Medicare as hey, I've got to sign up for Medicare. I'm going to do what my cousin did. I'm going to do what my uncle did. I'm going to do what my sister did. How can that, or why is that a mistake for people just to assume that they're going to jump into the correct Medicare plan?
Yeah, multiple factors. If you're in a certain income category, like whether that's a lower income, middle income, higher income, it's going to drastically affect whether you have income-related monthly adjustment amounts. It's going to affect what quality of care you seek. And so some people take that in mind when they're taking the referral and they're trying to find somebody like them that's giving them a referral. But then on top of that, each of those people, even if you're in the same income category, take different prescriptions. So when you get into prescription formularies, it's important to know exactly which plan meets your needs. Then you get into provider network, where someone might care about going to every doctor, another person might not. And one thing we've seen too is we used to think that everyone above a certain income level wanted Medicare with a supplement, and then they'd pick a drug plan effectively with that. And now we're seeing that that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes you have somebody that says, hey, I want that Blue Cross, Medicare Advantage plan. I don't want to spend a bunch of unnecessary money on this when I'm perfectly satisfied with my group coverage that's been that for years. And so I think it's a very personal decision. Or if you're a couple, it's a family decision.
That's right. Yeah.
It's not a decision that you make because my neighbor likes this plan.
Yeah.
And take that in mind too, because you might have a neighbor that says that they like their Medicare Advantage plan, but you might hit one prior authorization and say, I don't want to fool with this.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I think it's important. We've always taken the approach that we're not trying to steer you into one side or the other.
Yeah.
We can ask a couple of identifying questions to figure out who you are, same way you do with money, what your risk tolerance is.
That's right. Same thing.
And so I think it's just working with somebody, and it's funny, we've been doing a radio tour with our parent company, AmeriLife, about the agent-client relationship. And another thing that I think doesn't come up enough is it's not just plan selection. When you start working with somebody on Medicare, it's a concierge service. So
absolutely. I love that.
It's claims that come up later on. Not having to call a carrier and getting someone in the Philippines
That's right,
and call drops multiple times. Having, that can be Tanner's job.
That's
and
right.
You don't have to deal with that, right? But not just claims. It's now there's issues with people having to activate SSBCI benefits, which is like additional supplemental benefits. They'll be advertised, but you gotta have somebody that knows how to navigate and activate that. And there's just countless things, that.
Navigating Medicare, I think, is a puzzle. Just like Justin says, just like planning for your retirement with your money, it's a puzzle. You got to do the right pieces to that puzzle. But Tanner, something I've seen a lot with you is someone turns 64 and they wait until they're 64 years and 11 months before they start planning for Medicare.
Yeah.
Why is that a mistake?
Well, it's a mistake because a lot of times, like we just said, health insurance isn't the sexiest thing in the world. Usually, we're not going to be using it until we need it the most. So, health insurance isn't designed for us on our best days. It's designed for us on our worst. And so a lot of times people aren't educated enough and they put it on the back burner. They wait till that month, prior to turning 65, or, hey, I'm going to retire and I've got 14 days to turn in my 2 weeks notice and now I need Medicare. I need parts A and B to activate, right? Maybe it may be just part B. They turned, 65, they kept working and they turned on part A. Now they need part B to start. Well, sometimes they're at the mercy potentially of getting that enrollment processed, right? And so they just rush it. And then when they rush it, they may choose a plan that's just the easiest thing for them, or it may be the easiest way. They're sitting on the couch and they
check it off the box.
Check it off the box. Call a 1-800 number and just get rushed through the enrollment and really don't take their time to get educated, like Justin said, on both sides, which I know Justin's guys and gals and me, we're going to take the time to educate you because really it's your decision on which side you want. If I did my job, then I feel like I've educated you enough to understand which side you want.
So what is the prime age, Justin? When should someone start planning for Medicare?
Yeah, for probably the average person watching this show and listening in, I would think it would be closer. This might sound crazy, but maybe a few years in advance.
Okay, yeah.
And one of the reasons is, we see people making decisions like, let's say I'm, John and Jane. John is turning 65 and Jane is 62, and he keeps working until he's 68 just to keep her on his group coverage.
Right.
And that's not necessarily, it's not necessarily necessary, right?
Right.
He needs to, if he was to come in at 62, he can start making a plan to what does that actually look like. People are going to retire at different ages. We have we have people that are, we work with that worked well into 75 plus. And then we have people that want to retire at 62. I've even worked with people that, they're ready to retire at 55.
Oh, absolutely.
And so when you look at healthcare, we talk about Medicare a lot, but I think the good thing about, people like Tanner and myself that just nerd out over healthcare all the time is that we can begin that conversation early and even explore alternative methods to group coverage, just so you're not sitting there feeling like I have to work or I'm beholden to this position for this health care.
I see it all the time where, like you said, Justin, they have the needs to retire, but they don't because of health insurance. And when they realize, wait, there's options out there besides my group coverage that I could potentially have, they are able to pull the trigger even quicker than potentially they thought. Like
I
you
mean,
said.
health insurance is expensive, but Tanner, there are options for if somebody's ready to retire at 62. We can do a gap plan, if you want to call it, for those 3 years before they kick on to Medicare, correct?
Yeah, there's all different types of options, depending on their needs and what their prior authorizations or like pre-existing conditions may be.
Love it.
So marketplace, private insurance, gap plans. There's a lot of different options out there.
Yeah.
So when we come back on the second segment, the guys just made me think of a question I want to ask them, and that's someone that's going to continue to work past the age of 65, and comparing that group health insurance plan to maybe getting off that plan and getting on Medicare. We're going to talk about the ins and outs on that when we come back on our next segment. Now, as I said at the beginning of the show, if you'd like to get our 2026 Medicare guide, all you have to do is text the word Medicare to 423-710-9199 here in Chattanooga. If you're up in Knoxville, 865-951-7526. As always, we give away my book, Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. All you have to do is go to plantodayoffer.com. plantodayoffer.com. We'll send you the book right out, absolutely free. After you read the book, you can come in and talk to Tanner about Medicare planning or Justin about Medicare planning. You can come in and talk to Tim and Bobby here in Chattanooga about your retirement plan, Brogan up in Knoxville. Plantodayoffer.com. When we come back, we're going to dive deeper into some Medicare planning. You don't want to miss it, especially if you're someone 62, 63, 64 years old. You want to be sure to tune in for this next segment. We'll be right back.
Every year, taxes are handled the same way. You earn income, the year ends, and you file a return. That trains us to look at taxes through a rearview mirror. Retirement taxes do not always work that way. Qualified retirement accounts are generally taxed based on future income decisions and future tax rates. Once those decisions are made, flexibility may be limited. That's why tax planning often works best when done proactively, before decisions are locked in. Visit plantodaytaxbill.com or scan the QR code to use our free tax calculator and see what that potential tax liability on your qualified retirement assets could look like based on your current assumptions.
Welcome back to Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. Garry Thurman, founder of Guardian Investment Advisors. Thanks for joining us. If you're watching us on YouTube and Facebook, we really appreciate you guys tuning in live every week. And then if you're listening to us on one of the many radio outlets we use all over the Southeast, thank you so much. We appreciate you guys listening in every single week. We get a lot of calls from this radio show because a lot of people are just interested in the topics that we talk about. And today's topic is really focused around Medicare planning. We're going to get into some other stuff too. But, guys, I want to continue this Medicare journey because, Tanner, I know this is something that's happened in the few years that we've been doing Medicare here. Someone is turning 65 years old. They're not planning on stopping to work. They're going to work till they're, let's say, 67, 68 years old.
Yeah.
They've got good group health insurance plan. How do you work with someone like that and advise them on whether they should stay on that group plan or maybe they get off that plan and jump over to Medicare?
No, it's a great question, and it's a question that we talk about in our seminars a lot. So
Yeah.
somebody that's turning 64 and a half, you probably get my dinner seminars in the mail all the time. Come in, have a free dinner, and we'll talk about Medicare planning. But we talk about that, and it's definitely a conversation that comes up because group versus Medicare, I feel, has been like a snowball rolling down the hill as of lately. Group renewal rates are skyrocketing for some small businesses. And so it really is a conversation that somebody may want to continue working. Maybe they don't have a spouse that's on that employer plan, or they don't need their spouse to be on that plan. And so it really has become kind of a side-by-side comparison nowadays to help that person, because group plans, depending on the employer, we see all different types, like you said, depending on if the employer puts into their plan a lot more than others. So it's really a 50-50 toss-up, and it's a plan-by-plan need on whether that person goes on to Medicare when they turn 65, or if it's credible coverage, do they, extend out and, come off that plan when they retire. And so I really do see a 50-50 split, depending on the person, whether they want to stay on that group plan or Medicare is the more cost-efficient.
And I would think that employer is probably happy for someone to get off their group plan as an older individual and get on the Medicare, because maybe it reduces their rates, or maybe they don't get such a good big rate increase the next year.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. They can't compliantly ask them to leave that plan, right? But it may help with their renewal rates potentially. So they maybe want that older person, not saying they're old, but that person.
They're
going
older
on to-
person, yes.
Yeah, it gets actuarial numbers for the insurance company, and so that person coming off the plan may actually help their renewal rates potentially.
I like that.
But it is a compliance issue that we see. I've got group brokers that are friends of mine. We go back and forth and talk back and forth about it all the time because, in their world, they're seeing that hockey stick approach when it comes to renewal
absolutely.
rates.
Yeah, it's bad. Justin, this is a fun question. I'm going to ask you this question too, Tanner. What's the biggest myth when it comes to Medicare that you wish you could erase forever?
First, I do want to comment on which we were this.
Oh, please, please.
Yeah.
So we've historically had a lot of HR directors reach out over topics like this, because, like Tanner said, you can't incentivize people getting off of a group plan compliantly, but you can educate them, and oftentimes they find out that they assume that either one, and this kind of goes into the myth question, Medicare is inferior coverage to their group plan,
Good one.
or they expect that it's just going to be really too expensive and it's more cost effective. We find that most of the time people's group plans are costing them a decent amount of money. It's not, most employers can't afford to pay 100% of it anymore. So they're paying 75 or they're paying 50%.
50, yeah.
And then but when you're on a group plan at 66 years old, and that biweekly amount that they're taking out of your check, even if they're paying 75% of it, is in a lot of cases more than you would pay on Medicare.
Medicare.
And not only that, going back to the myth question, we find that most of the time a traditional Medicare enrollment with a Medicare supplement and a drug plan and maybe some additional coverage relative to like long-term care, short-term care, cancer, heart attack, and stroke, those types of things, is more comprehensive, and even sometimes or oftentimes more widely accepted with providers, because traditional Medicare is very widely accepted coast to coast, whereas group plans are in that carrier's network, which sometimes can be a great network. Like you could be in Blue Cross in an area where Blue Cross is really well accepted,
Right.
But you could also be in Blue Cross in an area that it's not, or United Healthcare in an area that it's not. And so I think that quality myth is something that people need to point out more often. Is I'm scared of Medicare, because they associate it with government health care, Medicaid, et cetera. But traditional Medicare, historically, unless you're going to be a congressman or congresswoman, is pretty much the standard for health insurance in the country. So it should be something people are excited about as part of it. Not to say that it's easy or not complicated, but as far as the quality of it, I think it's exceptional.
And that goes back to what we talked about in the first segment. Timing is everything. Start planning for this early enough so you know all those facts between your group plan and a Medicare plan. I think that's big. Is there a myth that comes to your mind, Tanner?
I mean, Justin hit the nail on the head on the one I was thinking of. I would say a myth would be the fact that I've got to stay on my group plan because my spouse needs coverage as well.
Okay.
Which it may be the case that spouse may need that coverage. However, if you have an agent that's doing their due diligence and asking the right questions about, pre-existing conditions and health conditions and medications and doctors, you may come to a situation that agent is helping explain, hey, listen, it's more cost efficient and quality of care for, older spouse to go into Medicare, and we can look at a gap plan, we can look at a marketplace plan, or potentially a private plan for that, individual that's under 65 that helps bridge that gap to Medicare. And again, it kind of goes to that. We see a lot in our situation here in the office, a lot of retirees that may have the means for funds to retire, right? And so that person, you're able to put two customized plans together, which solves their health insurance issues that they can retire with.
We often see that on the marketplace plan, and I don't want this, you can, these buzzwords can invoke a level of like
confusion
or even hostility, because when you say marketplace or Affordable Care Act, eventually you get into the word Obamacare. If you say, when you get into Medicare, you have Medicare Advantage. These can be buzzwords that people associate some sort of negative quality to or negative connotation. Let's put all that out of your head when you're trying to navigate this and work with somebody for what's best for your scenario. We're going to navigate the healthcare landscape in a way that helps you with your financial and healthcare picture, right? And I start there because in the case that he's talking about, let's say you're turning that, John's turning 65, Jane's 62. The marketplace, AKA the Affordable Care Act, those plans through healthcare.gov, sometimes people can look at them as low quality, but the truth is they cover 100% of essential health benefits. They have no pre-existing condition clauses, right? Mm-hmm. Certain other plans can have that, which then it can still be viable options for people in certain markets. But ACA, the Affordable Care Act, is income-based, okay? And so if you have someone who has a high income, they're probably going to pay a lot for ACA. And so people will think, I can't get on the ACA, or that's not an option for my spouse. But what happens when you retire and your income plummets? Yep. The ACA is not based on your assets. It's based on your actual earned income, or your adjusted gross income. So this is where it's really cool to have an office or a company that works with the health and wealth side, because we can look at, okay, hey, you're going to retire, your earned income's going down to this. We can probably control from an investment standpoint how much you actually draw over the next couple of years to keep you from hitting this threshold, so that your wife's marketplace plan is extremely affordable. Yep. And they maybe even has reduced cost variables, because if you can get the income correctly, they can even reduce the deductibles associated with it, all that stuff. And that's where it's like, going back to the whole premise of this. This stuff is extremely confusing.
It is.
And working with an agent becomes really important, and something you need to be able to ask an agent is, do you understand the wealth side of it? Do you understand the income side of it? All of these variables have to come up for some, and then how long have you been doing this? How many people have you helped with this? Because there's a dime a dozen new agents in the industry daily. There's not a lot of Tanners, sitting here working side by side with Garry. That's a rarity.
Yeah, it is. And Tanner, to that point, that's why it's so important to people. I want people to understand this. If you call that 1-800 number and deal with somebody you don't know, they could come and speak to you face-to-face or Zoom or phone call, whatever, but they have a person that they know. You know the area. You know the pharmacies in the area. It doesn't cost them any more money to come work with you versus calling an 800 number to someone, like Justice said, in the Philippines that have no clue who you are.
Correct. Or they're plugging your zip code in for the very first time, and they're like, 37421, plug it in. Oh, Tennessee. Oh, how's Tennessee going? How's the weather there? So they have no idea the networks, the provider networks at hospitals, what hospitals take what plans, and so forth. So I tell people all the time, you know exactly where to find me.
Yeah,
you know how to call me.
I know. I'm from Mississippi, and when we'd have these call centers, you'd hear the calls. They'd put it in the zip code, and they go, I'm from Tupelo, and they'd say, Tupelo.
Tupelo.
That ain't somebody that understands.
Chattanooga.
They don't know what doctors are in network around here.
No, they have no clue.
And I use the phrase I love to use. We're going to provide lifetime claims and billing issues for you. If you have something that happens, I just had it last week, where you may have a billing error or what you feel is a billing error. You can call me and I'll help. Me and my team are going to help dive into that for you. Because a lot of times it could be coded incorrectly, or there may be something, and a lot of
that
times
could cost you a lot of money.
That's where that concierge service comes. Yeah. There's been a lot of bad actor agencies that have come into the space that have deteriorated the idea of the relationship between the agent and the consumer. But the fact is, there's always been really good agents out there, and if you can get one that acts as a concierge, it can save you so much time and heartache.
And
not on just making the right decision on the forefront, but then navigating the changes, navigating the times that maybe a prior authorization does come up. And some people say with prior authorizations, well, if I didn't choose Medicare Advantage, I won't have prior authorization. That's no longer true. Traditional Medicare is rolling out prior authorizations as well.
It's crazy.
And so all insurance, all healthcare coverage is going to have that. You're not going to be able to escape that. And so what's the best thing to do is have a true concierge-style agent to help with that.
I love it. Folks, if you're listening in today, you can already tell Medicare is a little confusing. So we got a 2026 Medicare guide we'd like to send you absolutely free. All you have to do is text the word Medicare to 423-710-9199. If you're up in Knoxville, 865-951-7526. When we come back, I got one more question about Medicare for the guys, and then we're going to jump into some leadership qualities. We'll be right back.
Every year, taxes are handled the same way. You earn income, the year ends, and you file a return. That trains us to look at taxes through a rearview mirror. Retirement taxes do not always work that way. Qualified retirement accounts are generally taxed based on future income decisions and future tax rates. Once those decisions are made, flexibility may be limited. That's why tax planning often works best when done proactively, before decisions are locked in. Visit plantodaytaxbill.com or scan the QR code to use our free tax calculator and see what that potential tax liability on your qualified retirement assets could look like based on your current assumptions.
Welcome back to Plan Today on Tomorrow. My name is Garry Thurman, founder and CEO of Guardian Investment Advisors. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to either watch us on YouTube or Facebook or listen to us on one of our many radio outlets out there. Again, our Medicare guide, absolutely free. Text the word Medicare to 423-710-9199 or text the word Medicare to 865-951-7526 if you're up in the Knoxville area. And we're always giving away my book, Plan Today on Tomorrow. All you have to do is go to plantodayoffer.com, plantodayoffer.com, and we'll send it right out to you. We've talked a lot about, let's call it pre-retirees, folks that are headed into that age of 65. But again, we talked about a lot of folks are continuing to work. We already covered that. But what about someone, Justin, I'll start with you. Someone that's been on Medicare for 3, 4, 5 years. Should they be reviewing their Medicare plan every year to see if they might need to make some changes?
Well, this is a topic that it's I see it from both sides. So as an agent who's working with a lot of people, it is difficult, when everyone shops their plan every year, because I have to now review everyone's plan. And so the answer can never be, no, you don't need to shop your plan. But you are going to get an annual notice of change for either your Part C or Part D plan every year. So if you're on Medicare Advantage, you're going to get that. If you're on a standalone drug plan, you're going to get that. And so almost all of our customers are going to be on one of those two. You're going to get that annual notice of change. And, if that has some sort of drastic change, you definitely need to shop it. If you've had big changes in your health care, maybe you should shop it. If you're on a Medicare supplement plan and your rate goes up, you need to shop. But the good news about Medicare supplement rate adjustments is you can shop that any time of year. You do not have to do it in the annual election period. And so one of the things that we had dealt with in the past is, a lot of our Medicare supplement customers, the annual elections happens and all of this advertisement comes out and they think, oh, I got to call and shop my supplement. And so we would always try to get them to shop it either right before the annual election or right after, just because it hits in the heart of all of these people that do have to make changes relative to the drug plan. So my encouragement is you do need to look into it. You cannot just ghost it, right?
Right.
And it is increasingly complex. And so I think it would be disingenuous for me to tell people that they can't shop it. It's on us to be able to staff and prepare for that adequately. And we use a lot of technology, software.
Oh, absolutely.
We have intake forms that will help us collect information and help you make those decisions more efficiently. We just also ask, in that time of year, when it comes time to it, when we're meeting outside the year, when someone's retiring or turning 65, you always sit down. It can be, meeting people, building relationships, all that. And that time of year, we always try to, okay, we got to do this meeting in 30 minutes or less because we have so many stacked up. And so I would put that, out there. But also, if you have, this is the number one person that needs to shop. If you don't know who your agent is, like if you signed up 3 years ago to some call center out of Texas or Miami or somewhere, you don't even know where they are, or if you sign up with a local agent and you can't get a hold of them anymore,
Right.
I would not wait until the annual election period to build a relationship with someone else. As a matter of fact, there's a period called pre-AEP. It's October 1st through 14th. We can't submit applications during that time, but between September 1st and like October 14th, we do a lot of reviews because we can start to intake information, review things in that first couple of weeks of October. And then by the time there is a time to make a decision, we can call you up and we can say, hey, John, we talked about this. Has anything changed since 2 weeks ago? And he says, no, okay, well, it's time we're going to submit that application. And that way it's not, in the middle of, everybody kind of fighting. It's like Black Friday for 45 days, right? So that's my encouragement is, yes, you do need to shop, but shop smartly. Work with an agent. If you're working with Tanner and you're one of his customers, he's probably going to be reaching out or sending information well in advance of the annual election so you don't get caught up in the chaos.
That's right. Annual election. Explain that, Tanner.
Yeah, that's that period, October 15th through December 7th every year. That, like Justin said, it's Black Friday every day for us, where we can help with those Part C and Part D plans. And really, depending on the carrier, those plans can change their coverages, year over year. So formularies can change, networks can change. Sometimes even copays and coinsurance within the medical can change with those Part C plans. So like Justin said, what we try to do, and I even try it with a lot of my clients, in the education process, we do a lot of turning 65 business, right? And so a lot of times I like to educate them on saying, hey, you're going to hear from us come September about, your annual notice of changes coming in the mail if that plan is changing, or there's something within that plan that may be changing benefit-wise, right? If it is a drastic change, what we are doing on our end is we're trying to, put a game plan for that person together.
Yeah.
We're trying to outreach to make sure we get them on the books in those first 2 weeks of October 1st through the 14th, so we can talk about, hey, Jane, or hey, Joe, your plan is changing drastically. Let's go through a review again and see if there's another plan that may be best out there.
I like that.
I don't know if it's like us, but 80% of our consumers were always either week one of AEP shoppers or the last week of
week.
AEP.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you have to be one of those, week one is better than the last week,
Yeah.
because you can run into some issues with sometimes choosing in an appropriate amount of time. But yeah, that 2 weeks before is so missed out on, because people think it starts October 15th, they can't do anything. We can see all the plan data and share it with you.
Correct.
October 1st through 14th. We just can't process the enrollment until the 15th.
Right.
So it's a great time to get ahead of everyone else. And and then we're going to call you. We have to call you on the 15th again, just to make sure nothing changed and you still want to move forward. And then we can submit the application. But I can do an hour-long, meeting, or 45 minutes, or however long you need on October 10th, and it's going to be much more difficult for me to do that once the 15th is.
Right, I get that. So one of the biggest things at Guardian that I focus on, and my advisors focus on, is income planning, because income's the outcome. You got to have an income that's going to be there for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest components to income planning is Social Security, and timing your Social Security, when to turn that Social Security on. Tanner, do you agree or disagree? I think when you're planning for Medicare, it kind of coincides with planning for your Social Security.
Yeah, I think that's
Big time.
Very big, actually.
Why is that so important?
Well, it's an income stream, right? And so when we're talking about guaranteed income, or we're talking about safe income, that could be the first or maybe even the second biggest piece of income within your retirement picture. And when it comes to, hey, are we going to talk about Roth conversions? Are we going to talk about potential guaranteed streams of income? When that kind of happens, and you may have situations that occur within life where we all know crap happens in life, right? We don't want to have to be reaching in and pulling from potentially qualified accounts, because potentially, and I had this situation happen last year where I helped with an appeals process, couple, A and B. I won't go into more than that. They met me, came in. They were building their dream home, and they're building it up on the mountain somewhere. It's a beautiful home, going to be an expensive home. Had no idea about IRMAA, right? So they're both turning 65 within a month of each other. One was in October and one was in November, right? They've been building this house for multiple years now, but they've been reaching in and pulling from their qualified accounts to help.
Taxable money,
and they had no idea about this, and their IRMAA just skyrocketed,
right?
And granted, IRMAA is a 2-year look back, so they were looking back at their this was last year's, right? So they were looking back
23, 24,
2023 income, and we weren't able to avoid it, unfortunately, but it was only going to be for about a year and 2 months of that IRMAA charge, because then they realized, hey, wait a minute, I got to stop pulling from these accounts. We got to put something in place because of that. And so educating on IRMAA is a big deal when it comes to
we've
it.
seen this happened to me, and a lot of people think this is like only going to be somebody just with a ton of money or making super high income. But we had 2 retired teachers one time that had saved really well their whole life, had a great retirement, and they were using a financial advisor that was with a firm. I won't name their name, but they didn't do any health care planning at all.
Yeah, it's big.
Did not tell them, that they were going to get thrown into IRMAA. At the same time, my group was not doing any retirement planning. They were just doing the healthcare side. And so retired teachers, we look at their income, we weren't looking at the distributions they were taking. And we've adjusted our process based on even these types of scenarios.
Right.
But the right arm wasn't talking to the left arm. And then all of a sudden they're coming to us and saying, my Medicare premium is not what you said it's going to be. They sent me this in the mail and I have this huge Medicare premium. And then we start to dig in and they're taking these, significant distributions off of their stuff, probably to do home remodeling and that sort of thing. The funny thing is there's ways around that. If they have a securities account and they need that, they could technically do like securities-backed line of credit to do that doesn't create that taxable event, which a firm like Guardian would
That's
know
right.
that sort of thing.
That's right.
Rather than having you do that, you would think the other group would have known that. But it does come up. It is a big deal. It's very expensive. It's one of the for us, it's one of the hardest things to have to help with. Yep. On the flip side, with Guardian, you're going to have health and wealth in the same house, and because they're all communicating, the healthcare side understands a lot of that wealth side, and the wealth side understands the health side. Even something you have to work with when you go and find a Medicare expert and you're working with them, you have to be careful that you're not on the higher income or wealthier side of what they have worked with. It is very commonplace in the Medicare world that a Medicare agent primarily works with low income folks, and so they don't know that income related monthly adjustment. And even if they do, they're not used to it happening.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they just assume it doesn't happen to anyone. On you guys' side, you're dealing with probably more, middle class, upper middle class, and these are people that have retired and have, assets, and this is something that can happen to them. It's not that they're extravagantly wealthy, it's that they've done all the right things, prepared for retirement, and now it's one move can cost them exponentially more money.
And that's exactly why we added Medicare to our practice. We love to do income planning, investment planning, Social Security planning, long-term care planning, but Medicare is a big part of that. So that's why we created the Medicare arm at Guardian Investment Advisors. We'd love to send you out our 2026 Medicare guide. All you have to do is text the word Medicare to 423-710-9199. If you're up in Knoxville, text the word Medicare to 865-951-7526. Now, one of the things Justin did, he spent 8 years in the Marines. Then he created this great book called Purpose After Service. When we come back in, we're going to jump into a little bit about that, leadership, and then I'm going to ask some questions to the guys just so you can get to know them a little bit better. We'll be right back.
Every year, taxes are handled the same way. You earn income, the year ends, and you file a return. That trains us to look at taxes through a rearview mirror. Retirement taxes do not always work that way. Qualified retirement accounts are generally taxed based on future income decisions and future tax rates. Once those decisions are made, flexibility may be limited. That's why tax planning often works best when done proactively, before decisions are locked in. Visit plantodaytaxbill.com or scan the QR code to use our free tax calculator and see what that potential tax liability on your qualified retirement assets could look like based on your current assumptions.
Welcome back to Plan Today on Tomorrow. Garry Thurman, founder and CEO of Guardian Investment Advisors. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We've been talking a lot of Medicare. Again, you can get our Medicare guide by texting the word Medicare to 423-710-9199. Or if you're up in the Knoxville area, text the word Medicare to 865-951-7526. And if you'd like a copy of my book, Plan Today on Tomorrow, all you have to do is go to plantodayoffer.com. Plantodayoffer.com. Justin, 8 years in the Marines. You got out of the Marines. You went to work with your dad, and just started creating this machine. But spend a few minutes talking about your book. By the way, you guys can get Justin's book on Amazon. It's called Purpose After Service. It's a phenomenal book. I got it a few years ago at one of your conferences. Let's talk a little bit about that. What inspired you to write the book? What inspired you to become a leader when it comes to building a Medicare practice?
Yeah, so when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was 26 years old, and I joined the Marine Corps for purpose, and I think a lot of veterans find some degree of purpose in service.
Sure.
And then when you get out, whether that's post-retirement at 20, somebody joins at 18, they could fully retire and still be out at 38 years old, still young. A lot of people don't even start their career until they're 38.
Right.
And so there's this. issue with once I go to transition, what am I doing? What am I trying to accomplish? Like, what is my life about? Everybody has this kind of journey, I feel like, of finding out what is my purpose. And I think sometimes people that come out of the service, it's such a grandiose purpose with honor and, defend your country and the camaraderie and the spirit of corps of like the man to your left and right and all these things that are very iconic themes, And so when you go to transition into a career in insurance or automotive sales or any accounting, whatever, everything seems to pale in comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And so the book is about the bridge between it's not Medicare. It's the purpose of the consumer in Medicare. It's the purpose of the employees that you get to build and give purpose within Medicare. Medicare is the vehicle that we can put purpose into. And so my book was actually to go out to veterans and say, like quit trying to find something that is as iconic of a career as what you just left.
Right.
It's not about, the Marine Corps as a vehicle has its appeal, right? Now there's negatives and all that, but I won't get into that. But other mainstream, career paths don't necessarily have that immediate purpose associated with it. So I'd say find the purpose within the vehicle. And to me, that is still the same spirit of core. It's the man to my left and right. Who can I help give a career? Also make sure that they're a good steward of that industry so they're not hurting the consumer. So it's not about building a sales team where the salespeople are making money at the expense of the vehicle.
Correct. I like that.
It's about like, how do I build somebody that says I can earn a great income, feel purpose, take care and provide for my family, and then really develop a hobby. I mean, we just sit here as we went on break. I turned to my son who's behind me, and I said, if you all you do is live a topic, we can sit here and talk about Medicare.
All day
and
long.
most people will say, who wants to talk about Medicare? Well, I do because I've met all my friends in it. All my friends are in Medicare, they're in insurance, they're in financial services. So it's not necessarily that I love Medicare. It's that I love that I'm useful at something. I can be of use to a population. I can help other people find a use in that population. And that's what Purpose After Service is about.
I love it. And the only word I keep hearing right there, Tanner, is culture.
Yeah.
Is culture. He talked about the man to his left, the man to his right. Well, that's what we do here at Guardian Investment Advisors is how can I help the man to the left, help the man to my right to make sure our clients are getting the best planning they can get.
Yeah.
How important is culture when it comes to not just Medicare, but the whole purpose of someone going into retirement? Culture is everything.
Yeah, and it's huge because if you have an agent that understands that, it brings that passion out, which is needed in really what we do. When I started 6 years ago, meeting Justin through this whole thing, really what I was drawn to was, there's really two passions of mine now, helping people with Medicare, but also coaching. And so, the coaching, a lot of people know before the Medicare side of me, right? But when I met Justin, that was when he was, the Medicare coach in a sense. And so I was like, oh, who's this guy? And that's kind of how we met. And again, going to his events, going to the conventions, really created a community outside of this office for me, which helps because I do feel, I'd never serve, but like Justin said, if you're running with other people and you're in the same, situations where you can talk and workshop with each other, it does build a sense of culture. These do go, health and wealth, they do go hand in hand.
They do go hand in hand, yeah.
But they all are also a little different as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, if you're an agent that's on your own and you're in an office on your own, it can get kind of isolated too. So I think the culture part of it, having agents and friends outside of the office to be able to talk about this with, be able to spitball with each other because, our rules can change year over year as well with CMS final rules, and we won't go too far into the weeds on all that. But
there's just no way you can be there's no way you can be as effective on an island by yourself as you can in a culture of people that sit here and talk about scenarios. I mean,
right.
You guys make me think about things that that I'm not thinking about. And so that's like, it's like seeing around corners, we can only do that with, the collective efforts of one another. And then it's fun to see each other win, and by winning, I mean helping more people,
That's right.
So one of the things that we struggle with as, insurance or financial advisors is getting in front of more people.
Yeah.
People
Yep.
trusting
Yeah.
us and knowing that we, and that's why we do shows like this, is so that someone can build that rapport and be like, get to know us a little bit and be like, okay, these are real people. They actually have our best interest at heart. And so then when we go to meet with someone, we can get a lot of value out of the feeling of, I just helped that person, I earned a new customer. And, and so we get together and learn, how do we get in front of more people? How do we build more trust in
That's
the
right.
community?
Which is what we're trying to do.
That's what we're trying to do. And so I think, and you, when you said, I didn't serve, that I've consistently thought about having a whole different version of that book that's just called Purpose. Because
Purpose,
it
just
doesn't
purpose,
have,
yeah.
like a
No,
lot
right.
of people are 18, 19, 20, 25, 26, 35, and still searching for purpose, whether they served or not. It doesn't, it's, and so when we're serving people, you can serve in many capacities.
Yeah, for
and
sure. Right.
I think one final point I have, is sometimes when we're going to live like a purpose-driven life, which I think is a theme that maybe John Maxwell or somebody portrays, right? And some people search for this grandiose thing.
Yeah, they
Like,
do.
I want it, and then this is in no way, deterring anyone from, ministry or fitness, but people kind of go into like, I got to be a fitness influencer or a religious leader or some of that. And I think that God gave us all gifts.
Yes.
And sometimes the gift is understanding that this is my lane. This is where I can help people. That doesn't mean that I can't have a ministry within.
That's right. Absolutely.
Healthcare,
100%.
or you can in financial services. And so, and I'm not going to sit here and get super religious on it, but I think the point is, like, when you are called into a lane, like you sat down with Tanner and knew Tanner and called him in to be the healthcare guy here. That might have been, divine intervention through
Absolutely.
your to pull him
100%.
in. And
Yes.
now he has this fabulous career helping people, leaving everybody he meets better than he found them. And then he can work with guys like me, where we build a community around helping, and we just amplify
Try to
each
help as
other's
many as we
ability to
can.
help.
What's funny with that, and Justin brings into, he reminds me of my thought process when I got into this space 6 years ago. Going from teaching high school kids math classes and coaching, teenage girls, softball, right?
Yep.
And leading them that way to Medicare planning. That was a complete 180. I
Oh,
felt
absolutely.
like with a change. 6 months in, we started with these dinner seminars, and the very first one, I'll never forget it. Somebody came with me to help me, just with like checking off people and rosters, people signing up, and they're like, "Are you nervous?" And I'm like, "Actually, no, I'm not, because this is what I've done my entire career, was getting in front of people and educating them."
Leading. Just being a leader.
And about 10 minutes into the seminar, I started realizing, oh, wow, I'm in a classroom, it's just at a restaurant now.
Yeah.
And I'm teaching about a complex subject with a different clientele now than
the same
teenagers,
thing.
right?
It's the same
and
thing.
We're helping it make sense for them. And so at the end of the day, I tell everybody this, these career paths were so similar, and I had no idea about it.
Right.
It's funny, one of the top agents in our office in Mississippi
Yeah.
has become a good friend of
Correct,
yours,
Holt.
Holt Rushing. Shout out to Holt. He's a great. He was a basketball
Yep,
coach,
yep.
and so it's sometimes people, when they're called, that is an extremely competitive environment.
It is. Guys, we're wrapping up. I only got about a minute and a half here. I'll start with you, Tanner. What's something clients would never guess about Tanner Moore?
That they would never guess.
They'd never guess.
That I'm a state champion bowler from high school.
I love it. I love it. Justin, same question.
Oh man, I was the platoon high expert marksman, and I have the Board of Marksmanship Award in the Marine Corps.
That's
3 years in a
awesome.
row.
I got one more for you. I know both answers, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Favorite sports team?
Favorite sports team? The Braves.
The Braves. Okay. Favorite sports team?
I got to go Ole Miss.
I knew you would.
I
I knew
mean,
you would.
Vols. It depends on which one. Braves, Vols, you name it.
I love it. Hey, folks, listen, thank you for joining us today on Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. Again, if you want to get Justin's book, what is it called? I'm sorry, Purpose After Service, just go to Amazon. You can find it there. It's a great book. I think you'd enjoy the read. You can also get a copy of my book, absolutely free, Plan Today, Own Tomorrow, by going to plantodayoffer.com. And we talked a lot about Medicare today. If you'd like to get a copy of our Medicare guide, 2026 Medicare guide, text the word Medicare to 423-710-9199. Up in Knoxville, 865-951-7526. You can also just call those numbers, and we'll send the guides right out to you. Thanks for joining us on Plan Today, Own Tomorrow. We'll be back. I'm sorry, my words. We'll be back next week with more education on retirement planning. Thanks, guys.